I think that, in fact, he could probably get through it without answering too much in depth, which is unfortunate. We don't know. I mean, my concern is when speaking with Jeff and with others who had been in Nama, they certainly had the feeling that the push to get Zarqawi back during the time of Nama was really coming down from Rumsfeld and being hard-rolled from McChrystal. And their feeling was that there was some direction there. And perhaps that is a concern that they have. I mean, you really, really need to look at the specifics. And after the hearing was over, Levin stated that he had further questions for General McChrystal regarding detainee treatment that he was going to ask offline. That's great, but we really need to have a public accounting of what happened there. And if this is the person that we're going to have in charge of our operations in Afghanistan, and particularly in charge of detainee treatment in Afghanistan, he needs to publicly acknowledge what he may or may not have done or authorized in a center where torture occurred, and in fact soldiers were then convicted of prisoner abuse. So no, I'm certainly not happy at the outcome of this. I think they should have been much harder on him, and it seems as if the whole thing had been orchestrated from the beginning.
Mark Alasko, I want to thank you for being with us, former intelligence and targeting analyst at the Pentagon, now senior military analyst at Human Rights Watch. We are also joined here in the Firehouse studio in New York by Tom Engelhardt, creator and editor of TomDispatch.com, a project of the Nation Institute where he's a fellow. He's author of The End of Victory Culture, consulting editor for Metropolitan Books, and co-founder of its American Empire Project series. He recently published an article about what General McChrystal's nomination means for the wars in Afghanistan and Pakistan called Going for Broke. Tom Engelhardt, welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you.
Your thoughts on this hearing last week? What questions weren't asked?
Well, I think you have to actually go beyond the issue of mistreatment of detainees, because they were being mistreated for a reason. What General McChrystal was involved in was, if you remember the Vietnam era, a kind of a mini Phoenix program. It was a massive targeted assassination program. Bob Woodward, with some exaggeration, referred to it as the equivalent of a Manhattan Project for Iraq. Seymour Hersh has said that it was an executive assassination wing being run out of the vice president's office. We don't know. It was very secret, so we don't know how many people were killed, possibly hundreds. And we're talking here, Al McCoy, who's an expert on torture, says this wasn't boots on the ground, this was bullets in the head. And I think rather than counterinsurgency, this guy is being brought into Afghanistan to run an already dark war, and he really comes from the dark side. And I think, what we might expect is that we have news now that they're bringing 1,000 new special forces people, special operations people into Afghanistan. That's about 5,000. He's bringing 2 special operations people, generals from Washington with him. I think we could well see another massive assassination campaign in Afghanistan. I think that's what this could mean, and I think that's one of the things that we really do have to think about and look out for.
You write that the secret force of manhunters he commanded had its own secret detention interrogation center at Baghdad, Camp Nama, where bad things happened regularly. The unit there, Task Force 626, had its own slogan: "If you don't make them bleed, they can't prosecute for it."
Yes, and there was Camp Nama, which was the big interrogation center, but there were maybe five littler interrogation centers around the country, in Fallujah, another one in Baghdad, one in Balad. This is according to the New York Times. They did a report on this in 2006, which was quite good. A lot of the stuff we just don't know very much. This is the problem. But we do know that this guy really, he is a legacy figure from the worst of the Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld era. He was evidently close, possibly a friend of Rumsfeld. He seems to have been close to Cheney. Cheney gave him a thumbs up. It's the only appointment of Obama's, I believe, that he's given a real thumbs up to enthusiastically. But he's also the firstborn child, I think, of the quick desperation and even possibly hysteria of the Obama administration over the devolving war in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And I think he means a much more aggressive a greater application of force of various sorts and a much more aggressive stance in Afghanistan. I think that, and possibly Pakistan, even though he said we were not going to cross the border.
You said that he was a premature adherent to the idea of AFPAC.
Yes, he very early on in Afghanistan, because he went from Iraq to Afghanistan, he was very eager to have cross-border operations into, starting in 2005, he started backing this, and at the end of the Bush era, they actually ran a couple of special operations into Pakistan, one of which at least was disastrous, and they were stopped. But I think if things go not well in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and I think that's really a likelihood, as we apply more force, bring in more troops, escalate the war, frustration will rise. And the thought that they can cross borders but we can't will rise with them. And he's someone who wants to see the Afghanistan-Pakistan battlefield as one battlefield. And so I think there will be an urge. He comes out of a tradition, a Bush Cheney, a Rumsfeld tradition of borderlessness anyway. That was the global war on terror. Respect no borders, cross all borders.
You write about expanding the CIA drone war.
Yes, the war is expanding at several levels, and he may bring a powerful, this is McChrystal, a powerful targeted assassination campaign on the ground. We already have a targeted assassination campaign in the air going on, 24 hours a day, because we have these CIA-run drone aircraft that are flown from we don't know where, probably somewhere in the United States, over the Pakistani tribal areas. Reports from those areas, and we can't, reporters basically don't get into them, indicate very high casualty levels of non-targeted people. And this is, I've always said that strikes like this are not a war on terror, but a war for terror, because they create enemies, they create terror. But this area, the AFPAC theater, as they call it now, is going to have a lot more targeted assassination on a lot more systematic.
Why did Obama choose him?
Oh, that's an interesting question. All I can say to you is that when you look at what Obama's done, because it's always hard to know what people's motivations are, the Obama administration has kind of doubled down in Afghanistan and Pakistan straight across the line. He said during the presidential campaign that Iraq was the wrong war and this was the right one, and undoubtedly perhaps he meant it. There could be other explanations, but from the bringing in of troops, bringing in of advisors, civilian surges, the surge of targeted assassinations from the air, and various other surges, including the bringing in of more special operations troops, which, by the way, have been the troops in Afghanistan up to now who have caused the most striking incidents of civilian casualties. They've really doubled down, including money to, large amounts of money to go into Pakistan and so on and so forth. I can't necessarily tell you why. I can only tell you that it's evident that this war is escalating, and it will be Obama's war.
Tom, thanks so much for being with us. Tom
My
Engelhardt,
pleasure.
creator of the website tomsdispatch.com, project of the Nation Institute, where he's a fellow. His recent article, Going for Broke, which we will link to. This is Democracy Now! Back in a minute.